What's good, everyone? G-Berg Stacks here. Today we're going to be talking about the new items, statikk shiv. Well, they're not new, mostly changed. Statikk shiv, voltiac cyclosword, and we'll cover dusk and dawn just a little bit, right? Before we get into that, man, free Congo, right? That's another place, right? Shout out Africa, man. They're going through it. Genocide, continued colonization, right? We got to hold these places accountable. Really speak into existence what these people are really doing to us, right? Because, you know, everybody thinks, right, Europe, United States, they're great places. But not only are they not great to the people living in them, but they're not great to the people who they have once, or who they continue to bully, colonize, destroy, extract. Like, come on now. Alright, like I said, let's get into dusk and dawn real quick, right? So it was changed. A little bit of the gold value was shifted from the base stats into this new part of the passive, right? So it still has the spell blade, right? All the stats are the same, build path the same, gold the same, right? But now, when you hit somebody with your spell blade, right, your next attack will still apply on hit effects in additional time, but now it heals you based on your AP and based off of your bonus health, right? So if, let's say, you know, your full build, right, let's just go like a more top lane bruisery build. Let's say like Gwen, right? She's a staple champion that builds this item. Let's just say you have this and whatever, right? You have boots. You're gonna heal 83 every single time you cast this. That is amazing, right? Even if, let's just say this is your first item, right? Let's get you a Doran's ring. You're healing 20 every single time you use this, right? And it's not like you heal 20 only when you hit enemy champions. You heal 20 when you hit minions, monsters, epic monsters, towers, right? This is an incredible effect. This is now rivaling, aside from the gold cost, items like Eclipse, items like Sundered Sky. It's a mini Sundered Sky, to be honest, right? With even more power, depending on your champion. So I think Dusk and Dawn is that much better, right? It lost 50 HP, it lost 10 ability power, it lost 5% attack speed, but everything else stayed the same. And you got an added heal into your kit, right? So when looking at that, right, with the base stats getting reduced, it's worse on assassins, champions like even Diana, champions like Echo, champions like Senna, right? These champions that really want high base stats, it's worse, right? But champions that want more stuff like staying in combat, you know, if you want to go like Riftmaker, Dusk and Dawn build, you have so much healing in your kit. It's pretty laughable, right? Let's say you're somebody like Gwen. You'll have 10% Omnivamp, and every time you use an ability, you're going to heal about 40, right? 40 HP. And if you have stuff like HP per level on your runes, right? If you have double HP per level, which you probably won't, the flat AP is probably better. Maybe the move speed is better. Whatever, right? It's going to give you that much more. And since you're in the top lane, you're gonna have access to more base levels, which means more scaling. Blah blah blah, right? Things like that. Somebody like Shen, think about that. Who not only has, or who's going to build a lot of tank stuff, or even what's his name, Tom Kench, Sejuani, but they're going to have double HP scaling, right? So they're gonna get like a good amount of HP back just for building this. It's gotten that much better for bruisers, a little bit worse for, you know, champions like Echo, champions like Diana, which Diana probably shouldn't be buying this anyways. It got even better for champions like Azir, right? I was always of the mind that Azir should have been buying Dusk and Dawn pretty much every game. This item was super good on him, right? It essentially means that your soldiers deal double damage every spellblade proc. And because you do get a spellblade proc on your soldiers, and because you're pretty much using your abilities non-stop, this is an amazing item. It gives you the attack speed. It gives you everything you want. Survivability, right? But it is what it is. Let's go to the other items. I think this item's nasty. It was already super good. Now it's even better. Let's get into statikk shiv, right? So it's very brand new, or overall the theme of it has not changed, right? It has that AoE damage, AoE magic damage, electroshock damage that is really good for on hit champions or champions that want a basic attack, right? In one of my old videos I mentioned, or not old videos, but one of my recent videos that I put out this year, I mentioned that on hit champions do not have like their proper runans, right? Because runans was changed. It used to be an item that didn't give crit chance, but a while ago they changed it to give crit chance. And we know that most on hit champions, they don't necessarily want to go runans. It's really good for them, right? Especially since runans allows you to apply on hit effects. It's amazing for these champions, right? Especially you think of somebody like Kai'Sa, Varus, allowing them to proc their for Varus their W passive, or Kai'Sa her actual passive, right? And then pop them and deal massive AoE damage, or massive single target damage to multiple targets, right? Because that's what she does, right? She does massive single target damage. But imagine being able to do that to multiple people. So I don't know if they were listening to me, or somebody else had the idea, or somebody was like, maybe we should do this, right? You see my videos, I got super low views right now. Used to have a good amount more, but as of right now, I'm under the 100 club. Let's just talk about the item for right now, right? I gotta get back into this. I've been gone for a minute, and my wish has been granted, right? So statikk shiv is now 3,000 gold. This used to be a lot cheaper, like 400, 300 gold cheaper. Now it's a kind of a relatively hefty buy, especially when you look at the components, right? So 3,000 gold cost item. If we look at the components, for most champions in the bot lane, right, in order for them to win trades, you're going to be auto attacking a decent amount. But given Aether Wisp is in this build, and then let's say you buy the components that allow you to auto attack a decent amount, right? The ones that enhance your auto attack ability, right? Scout Slingshot, 20% attack speed with a 40 bonus magic damage on a hit, right? Every 40 seconds. And then the pickaxe, obviously that is going to be super good for basic attacking, right? But then you have 1,500 extra gold that you have to amass in order to build statikk shiv, which this is probably the weakest part about it, right? You can compare this to an item like Ginsu's. Has pretty much the same thing, right? The attack speed on hit item, Scout Slingshot, Recurve Bow, has the pickaxe, but then you have the amp tone, right? But a big thing about Ginsu's is that you usually do not buy this as your first item. You usually have another item to supplement, the build path, right? You have something strong, Blade of the Roaring King, Kraken Slayer, whatever else you use, you buy Nashor's Tooth, right? Let's stick on statikk shiv. So if you're buying statikk shiv as a first item purchase, because more than likely, if you have pickaxe, if you have Scout Slingshot, you're going to either stop for an amp tone, or you're going to stop for an Aether Wisp along the way, which means that the stats that you have on your character, on your champion, changes the way that more than likely you're going to want to do trades, right? If you have Aether Wisp and the enemy champion has Heartbone Axe, Recurve Bow, Retrix, right? They have the move speed, but they have more AD, right? Which means, especially if your champion doesn't benefit that much from ability power, right? Most of the time, AD champions, that they do have AP ratios, but it's going to be a lot lower than AD ratios. And of course, your basic attacks aren't going to benefit from that AP ratio, right? So you're going to be weaker, right? Let's say you're in an even state with the enemy champions. You're going to be weaker just because of your item purchase, which means that your trading is you have to be trading differently when you're building statikk shiv, right? This is the point I wanted to make. Before you have statikk shiv completed, the way you want to be trading is going to be different because you have Aether Wisp, right? You know, when you have Pickaxe and Scout Slingshot, your trading is the same. But as soon as you stop for an Amp Tome, an Aether Wisp, that's when your trading goes from being all in to more than likely going for more burst trades instead of going for your typical all-ins, right? Just because the Aether Wisp is just going to lower your usual like kill threshold by a decent amount for most champions that would go Kraken Slayer first, and then now that would probably want Static Shift first, right? Okay, that's it. Right now, let's talk about the stats. So it has 40 AD, that's not bad. It has 45 AP, that's not bad either. 30% attack speed and 4% movement speed. So all of the stats that you got from the components, those get upgraded a fair amount, right? This Static Shiv, the gold, what's it called? The gold, like the amount of gold that you get from the stats is more than the gold that you spend for the item, right? So already it's in an extremely good spot. And then it has two passes, right? So let's go with the Electroshock passive first. So usually when you have energized items like Rapid Fire Cannon, Storm Razor, even a voltaic cyclosword, I don't know if there's another one, but Fleet Footwork, that's a whole keystone, right? Your basic attacks would only grant you 6 energized stacks towards your next energized thing, right? But with Static Shiv, now your auto attacks grant you 9 extra, right? For a total of 15 per basic attack. But it does not work with Runaan's, right? You do not get extra procs or you do not get extra energized stacks per the Runaan's bolts, right? Per the 2 extra. So you wouldn't get 45 from hitting 3 targets or from hitting your main target and then the extra 2 from the Runaan's bolts, right? So you can't massively do that. That would be fun. That would be a lot. That would probably break the game. Too much AoE damage, right? But okay. That's something cool, right? Which means that on hit champions, you know, most of your items are going to have attack speed, which means you're going to be shooting out this Static Shiv passive, right? The Electroshock, the Electro Spark part of the Static Shiv a lot more, which is amazing, right? Has built-in synergy with other items that you want to buy, even with keystones such as Lethal Tempo, even with Fleet Footwork, right? This also means that Fleet Footwork is going to grant you that much more HP throughout a game, making that rune that much better for Static Shiv users, right? So you also got to think about that, right? Fleet Footwork just got stronger due to Static Shiv not only being a very strong item, but it being in the game with that Electroshock passive. Now, if you have Static Shiv, obviously it gives you, it's an energized item, right? But now your energized attacks fire a chain lightning, dealing 60 magic damage to up to 4 to 7 scaling, right, per level targets, right? So the 4 starts from levels 1 through 6. At level 7, it upgrades to 5 targets. From level 7 through 9, it stays at 5. And at level 10, it upgrades to 6. From level 10 to 13, it stays at 6 targets. And it finally goes to a maximum of 7 targets at level 14, going upwards, right? And then it is increased to 90 magic damage against minions and monsters, right? Which is not a lot, right? You might think of this and say it does not it's not a good wave clear item, but it actually is, right? We'll show it in a bit, right? And then it applies on hit effects to secondary bounce targets, while also it doesn't apply an extra on hit to the primary target, but it doesn't not apply your on hits, right? It just doesn't apply an extra effect to that person, but it does apply the damage. Okay, just, you know, keeping that clear, right? So boom, Static Shiv, what does it mean that it will apply on hits, right? So Kaisa, on her passive, it's an on hit passive. When you hit someone, it will apply. You will see all 3 of these will gain the passive, right? Right, has this little thing, this little indicator showing that it has the passive on them. You can see on this one, right? It's pretty nutty, and you can see that the damage from the passive is applied, right? These are target dummies with 0 magic resistance, so they will not only take the damage from the passive, from any on-hit passive that you have, right? Your champion passive, the 30 bonus magic damage on hit that Guinsoo's Rage Blade gives you, stuff like Blade of the Roaring King, 6% of the current enemy health as bonus physical damage on hit, things like Gnasher's Tooth, things like, there's more, Wit's End, and stuff like that, right? Terminus is a pretty big one. I don't believe it applies Essence Reaver, right? We could test it out right now, right? But as you can see, it does not apply like Spellblade passives. Okay, so Spellblades are pretty much a no-go with this item. Okay, so we can test out Kraken Slayer, right? You can do 1, 2, and then the Kraken Slayer passive will give extra damage, but you can see none of these in the back got extra physical damage, right? So I'm pretty sure that's intended and it will not change. So if you're buying Statikk Shiv, more than likely you will not be buying Kraken Slayer, right? You can test it with Blade of the Roaring King, and you will see that the ones in the back did take some physical damage, right? So it does work with Blade of the Roaring King. It can be a part of your build path. You know, this also works with stuff like Black Cleaver. I'm pretty sure it works with Titanic Hydra, right? It might be a little wonky, but as you can see, this one does this one, and then this one also does this one, right? So there are some ways there are some physical damage items which you can work with, right? Don't know too many that you would want, but we're just going over the items, right? And then we're just here to test the amount of, right? You see I have Statikk Shiv procced, or I have Rage Blade. It actually does not work like that, but obviously because Rage Blade gives you a lot of attack speed, it is very good to work with Statikk Shiv so that you can then charge it that much faster, right? So that doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's not necessarily as worth, right? But Guinsoo's Rage Blade does give you AP, does give you AD for a champion like Kaisa, right? If you want to get an early, I don't even know how early you can get this, an early Q passive, you're gonna have to do some things, especially if going AP, right? But we're not here to speak too much on that. But things like Wit's End, you can see all the magic damage is gonna be applied to everyone that gets hit, right? There is one cool thing with an item like Terminus. This is actually an extremely powerful addition to the game, the Statikk Shiv, right? Because one thing with Terminus was that in order to get the maximum value out of this item, you needed to auto attack 6 times, right? And you know, 6 auto attacks when you're trying to burst the first target that you're even able to auto attack, right? And you're hitting them for 10% less armor penetration. You're putting yourself in risk, and you don't have the armor and magic resistance that Terminus gives you. You know, it's not as good. It wasn't as good, but now Statikk Shiv actually applies all of the Terminus stacks to everybody hit, or you gain the alternating light and dark attacks against champions per Statikk Shiv, right? So if you had 5, is probably going to be the max, unless there's like a Shaco clone or another champion that has some type of spawning thing that counts as a champion, right? The max you're going to get is 5 stacks from this. But as you can see, one auto attack, I have 4 Terminus stacks. That is extremely powerful to getting early Terminus stacking in the fight, right? That means you're tankier. That means you're going to have that armor and magic penetration that much faster, right? So the build diversity that Statikk Shiv gives you as a champion will be very, very different. On the screen, I should have some champions that do work with this item, right? That should probably be looking into buying this item when this new Statikk Shiv comes out, right? It's going to be probably massive on so many champions, right? I want to specifically talk about some champions which are going to be like Yunara and Senna, that you have a build that they're a little bit different, but they're kind of the same, right? You will have a build where getting static shiv and then getting Runans, even somebody like Zeri maybe. Zeri doesn't have necessarily anything to do with on hit as opposed to Yunara, right? She does have a little bit of on hit in her kit. And she also benefits a little bit from the AP as opposed to Zeri. Really doesn't benefit that much, right? At least her basic attacks don't. And that's, you know, for both of those champions, the biggest way that they're going to deal damage, right? But is getting static shiv and then getting Runans, right? This allows you as an AD champion to deal so much AoE damage, right? AoE on hit damage, AoE magic damage, and these are two things that really work well in your kit, right? Specifically for Yunara and champions like that. Senna's a little bit different, I think, because Senna gets so much AD just from working in the game, right? Just from playing the game, right? From your stacks or from your souls that you get. Getting an item like Runans doesn't hurt you as much as some other champions that really benefit from getting a lot of AD, right? Getting high AD, right? And so you getting something like Static Shiv isn't as bad, right? And then there is an interaction with Static Shiv. Everybody that gets hit with the Static Shiv proc that a Senna has will have their like soul exposed, or however you want to call that, right? And then her next basic attack on them she'll take the soul out, right? Which then gives her more stacks and stuff like that. And that's great, but it's very hard to hit multiple targets with your Q, right? They're moving all around. They're not going to perfectly line up for you. And especially since she's someone who has so much range in her kit, I think Runans is going to be monumental on this champion, right? And then the fact that you can even buy Black Cleaver on her, right? Now you're stacking Black Cleaver on so many multiple champions, right? And doing massive AoE damage. And then because you get so much crit chance, you don't need to all in on crit builds. Then you could just buy an Infinity Edge, and now you're tanky, deal massive damage, and you have 2 more item slots to end up buying, tanky items, or even go more damage. Stuff like a rapid fire cannon, stuff like a Blade of the Roaring King if you need it, if you want it, and you're dealing just that much more damage. We'll see where the builds go. I think it's pretty much everything we wanted. I do think it's a little strong, not because it applies your on hits, because obviously when you look at the game, if you have Static Shiv as a standalone item, it's not amazing unless you're a champion that has some type of on hit. And even then, right, how easy is it for you, or how much damage does you applying that extra passive on hit that your champion naturally have actually do? For somebody like Varus, it's extremely, I think solely on Varus, it's extremely strong. Simply because if he hits you with an ability, he refreshes the cooldown of all of his abilities, aside from his ultimate. And that can really, especially if you're charging your W, or you're getting multiple W's in a fight, you're dealing not only current health damage, but you're dealing % max health damage, right? I think on that champion it's super good. For somebody like Kaisa, it's actually extremely difficult to continuously proc, your passive on secondary targets, right? It's going to be good. You're going to deal damage to multiple people and have your passive on them. And if you kill the primary target, then the secondary target might already have some stacks on them. So if you hit them with your W, hit them with your Q, hit them with another auto attack, boom, you pop your passive on them, and now you deal a lot of burst to them, more burst than they would naturally, or they previously would have thought would have happened. But, the case scenario isn't that happening. It's like, right? When is that going to happen? How often is that going to happen? Right? And so Static Shiv is kind of a scaling item, where then your next item, right, your Nashor's Tooth, means that you're dealing even more AoE damage, right? Even just buying something like a recurve bow is going to make you deal more damage to everybody, right? If you get like 2, 3, or 4 Static Shiv procs, you're dealing a little bit more damage, right? And things like that, right? So, and if you're going for an on-hit build, right, you get Nashor's Tooth, And then you're going for like more AP items, right? Like Dusk and Dawn, Rabadons on something like Kaisa. This is when it's really strong, right? Because then your thing on the multiple champions is going above 200 damage, right? And you know, minus resistances, if you're dealing 160 extra undodgeable damage, that does become a problem, right? But you need two extra items, 3 extra items in order for that to be really strong, right? And the other kind of strong interaction is the one with Terminus, right? An item that was very hard to really get going in a team fight, right? You want this procced as fast as possible before you in a team fight. Now you have a way to do it, which that's a very strong interaction. But you still need Static Shiv, and then you still need Terminus, right? When do you build Terminus? Does that mean that now you're building it as your second item, or is it still a third item, right? Do you want Ginsu's as your second item? Blah blah blah, right? We might start seeing a Static Shiv Terminus build and things like that. But how strong does that make certain champions? We'll see, right? So I don't think it's super broken. It's good interactions with a lot of champions, but I don't think it massively changes, you know, how these champions work, right? I forgot to mention that Akshan, you know, when he double taps, that does actually get you, it counts as an extra basic attack, so you do get 30 from doing the double auto attack thing, which is really good for that champion. You know, he's on the list there that I have on this item. But unfortunately, somebody like Lucian, which it's not necessarily a Lucian item, but you don't get, like, you don't charge extra energize stacks with Lucian passive, right? The double trigger, the double tap. I forgot what it's called. I think it's double trigger or something like that. Which is weird. That is a bug. That mostly goes towards stuff like AP Lucian that you see in different game modes, right? That's probably not going to be prevalent in Summoner's Rift. Okay, so let's talk about voltiac cyclosword, right? So I was relatively wrong in my first look at this. I did not see this galvanize passive on it, right? So when you damage an enemy champion, or damaging an enemy champion with an ability triggers your energized if it is ready, right? Not only is this, I hope you have seen, it's not necessarily a Kaisa bug, but it's a Kaisa interaction where if you proc Static Shiv on someone while you have voltiac cyclosword, and then you hit them with your W, it procs voltiac cyclosword and Static Shiv on them. It's like very annoying, very disgusting interaction that's in the PBE right now. I hope they get rid of it. That doesn't sound fun to play with or against at all, right? You're just killing the enemy team from off the screen, right? Dealing tons of AoE damage. It sounds whack. But let's talk about voltiac cyclosword, right? So it has gone down in gold cost. It used to be 3,000, now it's 2,900, making it definitely on the cheaper end of the lethality items. Still has the same build path, brutalizer, double longsword, but the stats have changed, and as you can see, the passive has changed, right? So it still has 55 AD. It used to have 18 lethality, but now it's only 10. Still has 10 ability haste, right? It has the new galvanize passive where you damage an enemy champion with an ability, triggers energized if it is ready, meaning that voltiac cyclosword is still an energized item, right? Okay, but now what changed is the firmament passive. Now your energized attacks deal 9% of the target's current health as bonus physical damage, and it grants you 15 flat lethality for 4 seconds. If you are ranged, I believe the target current health is 7 or 6, and then you end up getting 12 flat lethality, right? So my first look at this, I was like, damn, it kind of sucks because, you know, for a lot of assassins, most of your damage or how you set up your kills is going to start off with your spells, right? And if voltiac cyclosword, you know, it's an energized item, you need to basic attack, it's not going to be that good. But I didn't see this galvanized passive, right? So this is definitely the best, like, early game item for any physical damage dealer in the game right now, or when it comes out. getting 22 flat lethality while also 9% of someone's target current health, or 12 flat lethality and 6 or 7% of someone's target health if you're ranged on a 2,900 gold cost item is massive. I forgot there used to be an item that had something like this, or maybe I'm thinking about a different game mode, right? But this is nasty, to be honest, right? This has interactions with stuff like first strike, right? Because you need to deal damage, or the more damage you deal, the more gold you get, right? And because voltaic cyclosword is gonna make you deal more damage, it's going to be absolutely nasty, right? So I don't have the item. What am I doing? Right? So good build path, great thing. The one thing I want to test right now is to see if your ability applies the energized attack portion, which I do believe it does. That's nasty, no? This is gonna be an amazing item for assassins, jungle assassins, mid lane assassins, supports, right? Pike. This is nasty. This is nasty on Pike. All right, you land one hook, you're dealing extra burst, and the lethality that you get means that your ultimate threshold is going to be up, right? It's just going to be the best single target, or the best first item purchase, aside from maybe Hubris, right? So, voltaic cyclosword in the game, amazing. I already had a list up of champions there. There's probably some different champions that I have to look at now, given that now you can apply it with your abilities, right? This, like, any champion that wants to really stack damage, you're gonna be dealing massive amounts, right? And that damage and the extra lethality you get, it lasts for 4 seconds, right? But you can reapply it. You can reapply it every time you get your energized passive back, right? So let's say you do this. Obviously, this is not the best character to do it with, but yeah. And then you have it again, right? So probably at a point with some champions, you can permanently have this extra lethality and proc more of the percent current health damage, which is not too amazing, right? Because the lower HP you have someone, blah, 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 right? But the lethality is the big part. And so we'll have to see how strong this item gets. But it has really good combination with stuff like electrocute, any damaging runes that you have, right? It's just gonna make them deal that much more damage. So, I mean, this is a great addition to the game. This is gonna make so many champions like very OP, right? It's pretty basic, but that's kind of how you need assassins to be, right? It's basic and strong enough to be worthy of being picked. So the new stuff that's coming into this season, although it's not looking like too much, it's honestly going to be very big in terms of the changes that happen, right? So thank you for watching. Hope y'all enjoyed. You know, make use of this, right? Test some stuff out. Let me know what you think. Love y'all. Have a great day. Peace.